going on, everybody? Scott Oaken coming at you. We're going to be talking about getting open, something that Brian Harman, our recent Open champion, does really well and actually better than anybody. So let's talk about the most important parts of that. Hey everybody, Scott Oaken coming at you. We're gonna go over talking about getting open in the golf swing. Before we do that, make sure you check out, because we're gonna be talking about impact today. And if you're not sure about impact, that is something you definitely wanna have a really crystal clear understanding of. So you can get our free crash course. I will have it linked in the description below. It's gonna talk everything you need to know about impact. So make sure you do not miss out on that. All right, so let's talk about Brian Harman. So Brian Harman won the Open Championship. Thought it was a really interesting Open. Would have been really good if he wasn't there, right? We had a really good leaderboard right behind him, and I really liked the course. I thought it played really, really well. Thought it played fair. I usually like the Open because it kind of comes down to weather. There's not any like outside influence usually that you have, like, hey, we're going to speed the greens up crazy or do certain things. So he just played really, really well. And I think Brian went back to something that Tiger used to do really well, which was instead of trying to blast it, we're in this age of blast away, try to gain, a tenth of a shot, and we're going to try to just get the ball up there as far as we can. Brian relied on his really, really solid ball striking to just keep the ball short of all the trouble. He did not get into much trouble off the tee, and then he would just rely on his very, very solid ball striking to get the ball into the green. And then his putter happened to be pretty hot, so he would make some putts. There you go. That's the recipe for playing a pretty solid tournament and getting pretty far under par and not really showing any real signs of weakness, right? So how does Brian Harman hit the ball really well? Well, I grew up playing in that same era of Brian. He was known as a legend in junior golf, always could hit the ball well. And a couple of things that Brian does well, all right, and this is from his coach, Justin Parsons, who is out of Georgia. Brian rotates through the golf ball really, really well. He actually does it more than pretty much anybody that plays out on the PGA Tour. So when he goes to hit a golf shot, okay, he goes to hit the shot, his chest is going to turn and his chest is facing the target. So we call that open, right? So he's opening up his chest, and he actually gets it close to about 50 degrees open, which is quite a bit. You're going to typically see more around 35, 40 degrees, maybe 30 degrees of open chest. And this is measured on gears, which, is kind of the gold standard of measuring people and how they move, okay? So this isn't just, hey, we see this on a camera. No, this is the actual data. Now, the other thing that he does is he actually side bends a ton, right? So you can't open your chest, which is what most people do. They say, all right, I'm going to get my chest open. But they do that, and then they end up going over the top with the club, because if you are going to turn your chest, you have to match that up with more side bend, okay? So side bend just being, I'm bending to the right. So if I just stood in front of you here, okay, and I said bend sideways, do that, right? So Brian bends about 40 degrees or so, a little bit over that, to it would be his left, but for a righty player, it would be to the right, so to the trail side, right? Away from the target. Now, let's say we bend about, this much. Who knows how much that actually is, but it's going to be bend. And then I were to open towards the target. That is the position that Brian Harman is getting into, okay? So again, a lot of people get that wrong where they say, oh, I got to fire open. Well, you have to match that up with side bend. The more you turn and open up, the more I'm going to have to bend sideways to avoid going way, way over the top, okay? So for a lot of people, that side bend move is very difficult. So actually opening up more isn't a fantastic option unless you work on the side bend part, okay? Now, one of the other things that Brian does, and again, this comes from his coach, is if you are going to turn and you are going to rotate open that much, you have to have a certain matchup with the golf club, okay? So here's what most people do when they go to hit it. You can see I've got our impact screen up here, okay, showing our impact on the flight scope. All right, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to turn really hard, okay? And what you're gonna see here is my impact location is out towards the toe, okay? This is what typically will happen, all right? When I go to hit this ball and I turn, okay, I turn, the club in your hands and the handle are gonna be moving left. So for a right-handed player, they're gonna be moving in, okay? And that's pulling the club in, okay? So again, it's gonna do a couple of things. One, it's gonna make your path wanna be more over the top or to the left for a right-handed player. It would be to the right for a left-handed player, okay? Now, that also then would bring in a slice, things that most people don't want. So again, this is another reason why this might not be the best matchup. But you also start moving the center of mass of the golf club or the center of the mass of the face, right? Where that sweet spot is, that is starting to move in. And we get a lot of toe strikes when that happens. So what does Brian do, and why is it necessary that he has to turn as much as he does? Well, it's because when Brian swings, he has, and again, this is stuff we can measure with gears and other devices, is when he comes down, he is getting the club to tip out. This is a key move in the golf swing. I don't care who you are. If you want to bring the club back here, I don't recommend it, but if you do, you have to tip the club out to the ball. You have to get it out there. Watch all the best players. Even if they shallow it a ton, they have to get this club tipped out. That's why a lot of times you'll see guys turn, their body stops, and the club then goes, okay? The club has to tip out. Brian has some of the most tip out that you can have, okay? So again, the tip out, if you're familiar on YouTube, you're gonna be seeing, Mike Malaska, that move. It's not a coincidence that I like this move. Big influence in my teaching and in my game is from him. But what that does now is that allows me to move the center of the golf club out to the golf ball. It also lets me swing my path more from the inside out, okay? So that is why Brian has to match up. He has so much of that tip out that then he has to counteract it with more turn. So because he has a ton of tip out, and I think that's something that comes from his junior days, seeing some of the drills he did with some of his coaches growing up. Jack Lumpkin was a big influence in his game and his life. They had him working a lot on getting his body more still, hands more in it, and which is good in my opinion. But then as he gets older and he gets stronger, now we're going to start seeing those hands work really hard, and you got to counteract a little bit, probably trying to battle off a hook a little bit, to be honest, as we go through. So just know, if I'm going to turn more, I have to tip the club out more, okay? I have to tip it out more. So it's a weird phenomenon where people say, oh, I'm going to turn more and get my hands out of it. But in reality, you're getting your hands in it more the more you turn. Not a bad thing, but just something that you need to consider and think about with what you're doing, that, hey, I'm going to turn more and take my hands out of it. That really doesn't match up. So if I go ahead, I'm going to give it a try. Not my most natural move, but we're going to try to tip that club out. And I'm going to try to turn as much as I can as we go through. Okay, little bit thin, but you can see I move that center, that strike into the center of the club face on the horizontal, right? So that's how we would do that, by getting more of that feeling of, hey, I got to get the club head tipping out, okay? So really, really important thing as we're looking at ball striking. Again, everybody's going to say get more open, do all this stuff, but you have to understand what is going on at the golf club. We still need the golf club to make the move. We still need to be able to get the center of the golf club on the ball. And honestly, our hands are the part that's connected, so you're going to have to do something with them. You're never, ever going to take your hands completely out of the swing. So if you have any questions about it, leave a comment down below. If you also have any questions about our crash courses, please leave that comment down below. And as always, click that subscribe button if you're not a subscriber already. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks everybody for watching. Peace.